Today we're going to take a look at how to unbox and assemble a 12-inch Covington grinder. This is a variable speed model. They also make a single speed, but the unboxing and setup is going to be very similar between the two models. So let's jump right in and see how this goes together. When you receive your Covington grinder, it will be in a box that is roughly about 24 by 24 by 30. It's going to weigh about 180, 190 pounds depending on the model that you get. So it is going to be a two-person job to get it off the truck and kind of positioned where you want it. Now the first thing you're going to want to do when you have your grinder, don't open the top yet. This is going to be the top. You'll see this end up labels on your box. What you're going to want to do is turn this box completely over, so you're going to open the bottom of your box. Now the box will be stapled through the bottom, so you want to be careful with those. Unfold all your flaps. You'll have some particle board in the bottom, chipboard. You want to take this out. All your packing and foam material. You're going to also remove that. And you can see you have the bottom of our grinder. This is exactly what we want to see. So the next step is we're going to take all these flaps and fold them down, and then we're going to turn our box back over so it's upright again. Now that you have your grinder turned back over to its top side, you're going to just remove the box. This is sometimes easier with two people, but it can be done by yourself. And once your box is off, you'll see your packing material, including your warranty and your accessories box. You'll definitely want to keep hold of this for a little bit later. Once you've gotten your box off, you can peel off the external packing material and expose your brand new grinder. Now the foam around the wheel head is going to be very, very tight, and that's fine. You want it in there really tight to protect the wheel head. So a lot of this is just muscling it off, pulling it out from around the wheel head and getting that foam out from the wheel head to expose it. You're not going to hurt the wheel head, so you can pull as hard as you want and just make sure you get all that foam out to expose your wheel head on your grinder. Now, as you can see with your 12-inch Covington grinder out of the box, it sits fairly low to the ground. This is great if you're going to be seated in grinding, but if you're going to stand up and grind, we highly suggest using the stand as a separate purchase here. And we do have one of the stands here. It's going to raise the level of this grinder up slightly, so it's a little more comfortable to grind with while you're standing. You can, of course, build your own box for the grinder if you want to. Anything to kind of bring it up to a level that's more comfortable to grind while standing. So I'm going to get somebody else in here. We're going to lift this and we're going to mount it onto our stand here. Now the one thing you want to notice with both the stand and the grinder is both will have a leveling foot at the back corner. On our stand, it's right here. You can use a wrench to loosen this up and lower or raise the leveling foot on the back here to accommodate your floor and to make sure both your stand and your grinder are level. If they are not level, you're going to get some unusual noises from the grinder, and it's not going to operate as well as it should. So it's very important to make sure that you level both your stand and your grinder. And on the grinder, it will also have a leveling foot at the back corner of the grinder as well. So you'll want to make sure to level both of those. Now I have already leveled this stand for our area here in our cold shop, so it's ready to go. We'll mount this into our stand here with someone else and make sure it's level as well. So we've got our grinder mounted on our stand now. We're just going to use a little bubble level here. There's a little bullseye bubble level, and just drop it on our wheel head. And it's going to be a little difficult to see at this angle, and the bubble level may look like it's a little bit off center from the angle of the camera, but looking straight overhead with my eyes, I can see that my grinder is nice and level. My wheel head is actually level, even though this looks a little bit off due to the sideways angle of the camera. Now the first thing you'll notice, this is a variable speed 12-inch model, so you've got this controller box on the front of your grinder. There are a couple of different switches and knobs that you want to familiarize yourself with. This is a reversible head, so the head will go both forward and reverse. Now you have your variable speed controller right here, and it will go from 0 to probably around 1100 RPM. Most of the time I leave this on about 600, 700 RPM, somewhere in between 60 and 70 on the controller. That works really well for both grinding and polishing. Your start and stop button is here. You'll notice it is in a middle position. That's a resting position. If you turn it on, it goes back to your middle position. Off, stops there. So you can leave it in the middle resting position, or you can leave it in the stop position if you want to. The motor on this grinder is actually a 220 volt 3-phase motor. But with this controller box, that doesn't really matter. The controller box will input 110 single phase, so your plug-in on this grinder is a typical 110 outlet. So you can plug this right into the wall. You do want to make sure that you have a 20 amp fuse dedicated simply to this machine though, because it will have a pretty big draw on amperage, but you can plug this straight into the wall. The controller box handles all the electrical to the motor itself. Now is where we'll want to take a look at our accessories box that came with our grinder, one of the first things we took out of our package. If you open up your accessories box, you'll see you have two separate lock line kits. Also in your accessories box, you'll have a center plug that has no center hole in it. We'll cover that in a moment. And a spanner wrench. This wrench is used to remove the center plugs from your grinder. So the first part of your setup is going to be getting water to your grinder. On the side of your grinder, you'll notice you have this water manifold on there. It has an input here. This is what's called a push to connect adapter. It's got a little orange ring around it, and in the middle of that ring it's just open. And then you also have these two valves up here. This is where your lock line material is going to go, and it's very simple to work with this. You just put it on and they snap on. So now we have our lock line attached for our two external water feeds. We need to actually get a water feed going in here. So now we're going to cover attaching your water feed to your manifold. With our tubing kits, they come with two adapters, one for a garden hose and one for a 1/4 inch push to connect adapter, and 6 feet of tubing. Now these will all be loose in the package, but what you do is you take your push to connect adapter, with some Teflon tape you screw it onto your hose pipe connector. Once these two pieces are together, your 1/4 inch tubing simply pushes into the push to connect adapter until it's nice and tight. No tools required for this one. If you need to remove your tubing, you simply push in on this ring and pull your tubing, and it comes right out of the adapter. Now we're going to attach this to a spigot on the wall. That is our water source, and then our tubing into our adapter. So in our shop we have regular water spigots like you'd see outdoors on your own home, and we have our garden hose adapter here with our push to connect adapter on it. So the same spigot that works with the garden hose will work with our garden hose adapter. So we'll tighten that on. It does have a water seal in there. You can use a wrench to tighten this down as well to make sure you don't have any leaks on there. Generally a good hand tightening is fine on these. So now that we have our adapter plugged into our water feed, we take our 1/4 inch tubing that we had before and we'll simply insert it into our push to connect adapter until it stops. Once you have your water feed hooked up to your hose pipe connection, be it either a garden hose or an in-the-wall spigot, you can also use the submersible pump. The other end of your hose in our push to connect adapter, you just simply insert into the hole and push until it stops. If you do need to remove your tubing, you push in on this orange adapter and pull out on your tubing. It's as easy as that. If you need to reinsert your tubing, you simply insert it back into the hole, push until it stops, and your tubing is locked in. Here's your drain line that comes out of your grinder. In our shop here, we actually have a system that will take all of our refuse down into one single cascade system that filters all the refuse out, all the ground glass. You don't want to put this directly into your floor drains or into your sewer line. You do want to have either a bucket system or a cascade system for all the ground glass and debris to go into. You don't want that going down into your sewer or your drains. Now I've turned the water on at our spigot source, and you see we've got our two external lock line adapters here. So you've got valves on the side. You open any of those valves and you can see I have my water running through my external water feeds. Now we also have our center water feed. I'm going to move these out of the way, and if I turn that valve on, you'll see through the middle of our grinder our water's coming up through our center water feed. So let's say that you're running your external water feeds and you do not want to run a center water feed, but you know you still need to have water running through your center water feed to cool the water collet on the shaft so you don't burn out the bearings. Well, that's what our little solid adapter here is for. And let me demonstrate how this works. So with our center plugs, you have our spanner wrench that came with our grinder. You'll notice it has two little knobs here that will match up with the holes on our center plug. And loosen up our center plug. So once we've loosened that, we can unscrew it. And we can replace with a solid center plug that has no center hole in it. This is also the process you would use if you were going to use one of the center cone adapters, the CBA module, that is 5/8 11 on both ends. This would screw into the center of your grinder and allow you to use cones or domes to grind out interior bevels on pieces. These would mount directly onto this and have a water feed going through the center of this dome for you. Now you're probably wondering, now that I have the center plug in here, what's going to happen to the water if I turn on the center water feed while the machine is running? There's going to be a buildup of pressure. Won't that damage the water sleeve? Well, when you turn on the center water feed and it's plugged up, there's actually a release valve on the center spindle, on the water sleeve itself, that will eject the water down to the drain. So we'll turn on our center water feed here, and then we'll take a look down our drain line and you'll be able to see the release valve go into action there. So I have my camera over our drain line in the grinder here, and you can see this is in the pan, the water pan of the grinder. Anytime you work with anything, this is where all your water and refuse will go down your drain line. So if I turn on my center water feed with my center plug in there, you should be able to see the water coming through our drain line here with the release valve. There you go. So anytime you have your grinder running and you turn on your center water feed, it will actually eject through your drain line here through a release valve. So